the hemshech to the last clip about Chof Sivan Tavshin Aleph, just like to add how I remember it became a Yom HaBayer from Tavshin Mem Hey and on. So Bichlal, from like Tavshin Mem Beis and Mem Gimel and on, there was 8 Sibbolim of Svarim were being printed by Kahas. The entire Bichlach, the Alter Rebbe is my Marim, Middle Rebbe is my Marim, the Rebbe Rashab is my Marim from the earlier years. V'chulu v'chulu, L'kutei Marim, the Tanya, Madar Kama. So amongst these things were also the Igris. So Mamish, every couple of weeks there was a new Sefer. And so when it came to the Igris, like even in 1 year, like I think Tavshin Gimel, like at least 5 chalakim of Igris came out that year. And so I have a dear friend, Rabbi Avrami Kivman, who's the head shliach in Liverpool. And he was a class older than me in yeshiva. But his Inyan as gekocht in the Igris, and whenever a new sefer of Igris came out, he would go through it from cover to cover. So I remember one day that I think it was the beginning of the Nuzman Limudim, at the end of Mem Gimel, right before the New Year Tashin Daled Mem, and he was in Zal and he was going through Igris and. The new one that just came out, Chelikei, and went over and he showed me, give a look, they printed now a letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe that says clearly the day that the Rebbe came to America, Chof Sivan. This was the letter to what was his name, David Meir Rabinovich, the Lubavitcher Roth in Boston, whose son, Asher, was one of the lawyers in D.C. that was being shtadel to bring the Rebbe to America. So that's the famous letter, and they also printed in the beginning of the Igris the photocopy of the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe to the Rabbi Rabinovich, Hayim Ba'at Tzlacha Chasni Hagayin, and the famous letter. So I remember Rabbi Avrami Kivman telling me then, this is mamish, we're not fighting, make this a Yom Tov. I'm telling you, Baruch, this is going to be a Yom Tov. Now that we know the exact date. Okay, I also felt it, because I was also into the Igris those days too. So, all that. But what sort of made it more of emphasis, the cheshivas of the new Sifrei Igris came out was that Pashat a few weeks later, Erev the Farbrengen Erev Rosh Hashanah to Tashin Daled Mem. That means the last day of Tashin Mem Gimel. The Rebbe came down to Farbrengen with 2 Svarim, with the 2 new Svarim that were just printed. One is Tzemach Tzaddik et Torah, and the second was the Igris for the Frierdiker Rebbe Chelikei. And in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke all about the first letter there that has to do with the Frierdiker Rebbe being trapped in Varsha at the beginning of the war, and that he's giving over that a good Chabad, a Guch, should take the Svarim he's giving them back to Aguch, basically showing that the Svarim belong to Aguch Chabad. And the Rebbe spoke to Farbrengen, how there's the Indian of Ein Zimmer, there's the Indian of Achdus, and the Indian of Agudas Chabad, Aguda. B'chlal, it was like, in retrospect, a year and a half later or more, when the whole Mishpat Svarim thing began, we understood Lamafreya that the Rebbe was already favarning in Yonim of the Bailis of the Sfarim. It was already understood that this is that Chof Sivan was like a chiddush, and between I was a quite young bacher then, but even so, with the chshivas hadavar of this day. Now, I don't know why it took more than a year, because the Pashtos, if it came out in Igris, end of Mem Gimel, then already Chof Sivan Daled Mem, they should have already started Farbrengen on Chof Sivan. But L'Poyel, it took another year to Tashmim Hay. And I think part of it, if I recall, again, I wasn't from the Elter Bachrim, I was a young Mesivta Bacher. But if I remember, around then in 770, it was also connected with the new Sichos Kodesh were coming out from Gershon Eichhorn and Yaska Greenberg that were in Alter Zalve. And some connection there that it became his eirus to make the Farbrengen for Chof Sivan, which we made upstairs in the small zal upstairs, Chof Sivan, and it wasn't a big island. And I remember Reb Herschel, Harry Fogelman was there, Farbrengen, and he was giving over the mises that they remembers from the first Farbrengen of the Rebbe and Gimel Tammuz Tafshin Aleph, and the Cholzlatsche, and as Mizakt, as the Amerikaner Bachrin kennen go to the Burma or the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe Sichis, and he was asking, he was like shtickle for herring on it, V'eit Kahina, and that it took 3 days till the Rebbe met with the Frierdiker Rebbe, v'chul, and all these stories, which I think years later they printed over. That was said then. I don't remember the other old Tmim there. I think including, in addition to Herschel Fogelman, maybe Velvel Schildkraut was there. Nochain there. But I remember it wasn't a big Eilam for Tashmim Hay, but it was the beginning of making it an official Yom HaBair. And it was only the next year, Mem Vav, which was also on Shabbos, and that was a famous Ishu Beisai with Meir Halik with the bottle. And it was then that they moved it, the middle of Farbrengen, from upstairs to downstairs and made it a whole big fight. So the Seidah Zach. Yeah. So Takke soll sein not just Niskarim but also Venasin, and then already from then on the Rebbe was Mekabelit as we know in the Sichos as Tzadas Elyon Eichet. All right. So this also shows that sometimes, a thing has to come from Chassidim's own innovation, from Ha'alas Man for these inyanim. All right. And should bring down into Chatzkel Tachten all the Giluyim. Amen.